Procrastination, avoidance, aversion, and fear. These are all things we experience when faced with making an important change in our lives. But what if the very thing you're not doing is the very thing that will magically change your life? Hi, I'm Monique B. Thomas, and you're listening to episode 25 of the Monique on the Mic podcast. I recently heard a quote, and it literally hit me on the head. It goes, "The magic is in the work you're avoiding," or something like that. Unfortunately, I don't know who to credit for it, but I know that it hit me really hard. We all know how difficult it is to make lasting change because it requires constant daily effort once the motivation is worn off. But maybe if we look at it from the point of view of what we stand to gain if we actually buckle down and do the work, that could make things easier. Let's take a look at how this shows up for singers. So, you're constantly procrastinating. You find songs and you need to sit down and learn them for an upcoming event. The event is important, and you know that if you just take the time to learn the songs and get comfortable with them, you'll totally knock it out of the park. But you don't. Instead, you wait till the last minute, making sure that when you show up to the rehearsal or the gig, you're all panicky and probably overly sensitive, which looks like you're neurotic to the other musicians. You're stuck in the middle of an emotional soup of anger, disappointment, shame, and despair. Things could have been so much different, and you know it. What about avoidance? You avoid doing the things that will expose your weaknesses, and therefore, you miss the very things that will help you improve, like listening to your voice lesson recording. Now, I'm going to expose myself here, but I have years and years of voice lesson recordings that I haven't even listened to at all. There was a time when I was too afraid of what the recording would reveal. After all, the recording is completely objective. What you did is what is recorded. It won't sugarcoat anything for you. If you're out of tune, it's captured on the recording. If your sense of rhythm or overall phrasing is weak, you'll hear it. If you don't know the song well, it'll be obvious, painfully obvious. And if your technique needs work, well, you can run, but you can't hide. It'll all be there in that nice, but not so nice recording. It took me so long to be emotionally mature enough to face the facts. I was happy enough living in my own head. You know, that glorious voice you hear when you sing in the shower with just the perfect reverb and your favorite freshly scented shower gel. Now, I listen to my lessons eagerly and regularly. My point of view has changed, and so has my language. Instead of taking my recordings as an ear beating, I take it as an opportunity to improve. The recording simply presents very specific and personal instructions in order to get better. If I just take some time, at least 5 to 6 times per week, to listen and follow the instructions on the recordings, I'm sure to get better because I'm working with a great teacher. Now, before I move on to my next point, I want to remind you to stick around to the end because I have a very exciting special announcement to make, and I don't want you to miss out. What about aversions? You have a strong aversion to doing particular types of work. Let's say you're a singer that knows you have a weakness with rhythm. Hint, most musicians do, you're no different. The tendency is to avoid any sort of rhythmic work at all. This type of singer will often over-decorate the melody with riffs and runs and other embellishments, and you won't recognize the melody that well, but they're hoping you won't notice. But I think the most obvious and common aversion for singers is singing high. 80% of new students come into my studio singing in what I call the basement. Some recognize that they are doing it on purpose, but many don't. They'll just say, "Oh, I'm more comfortable singing in the low register." But check this out. You only get comfortable with something by doing it over and over again the right way. And a major part of listening to how to sing properly is learning how to sing appropriately high for your instrument. So, whenever I see students picking only low songs, I'll either raise the key or I change the song. But this has very little to do with simply challenging the student, although it is a bit of a mental challenge. This has more to do with truly learning how to use your voice. All well-trained voices have low, mid, and high notes readily available. So if you call yourself a singer, you're going to have to face your high notes sooner rather than later. Let's look at procrastination. The truth is, at the root of procrastination, avoidance, and aversion is fear. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of looking, feeling, and or sounding ridiculous or simply bad. The fear of having to deal with what is and not what you'd like things to be. I know it takes a lot of courage to face fears, to actually tell your ego to have several seats while you do the one thing or things that are necessary evils. The truth is, they're not evil at all. They're exactly what you must overcome in order to become your ideal singer. So how can we overcome procrastination, avoidance, aversion, and fear? You can start by looking at what you are doing. So what are you procrastinating on or avoiding? What do you have an aversion to or are fearful of? Please understand that therein lies the answer to how you're going to get to where you're trying to go. I honestly would write them down and ask myself, why? You have the answers to these questions. When you get your answers, you can work through them one by one. You might want to take a piece of paper and write down the pros and cons of what you are doing, or rather, not doing. Here's an example. What do you stand to gain by continuing to avoid doing X? What do you stand to gain by actually doing the thing you're avoiding? For some, it might be that the area they're avoiding is taking voice lessons because they think that the lessons will reveal that they are not talented enough. But here's the thing. You don't take lessons based on talent. You simply take lessons to get better by learning about your blind spots and weaknesses and working on them. Talent has never been a prerequisite for taking any type of lessons. In fact, talent is overrated. Because if you don't do the work, those who weren't initially as talented as you will surpass you with hard work. There's no such thing as being so talented that you never have to do any work at all. Let's try one more example. You sing all the time, at home and in your lessons, but you're afraid to sing in public, so you never perform, ever. What do you stand to gain from never performing? Well, the only thing I can think of is you get to protect your fragile ego. Yeah, I said it. Your ego is fragile if all you do is avoid doing something you actually want to do. And as abrasive as that may sound, at least you have something to work with, or rather work on. Listen, I keep it real here. I'm going to tell you as it is. What is standing between you and the stage is more likely your ego than your voice, or even what anyone thinks about your voice. And speaking of what others think of your voice, when we put too much stock in what other people think of us, we give all of our control and power over to them. When it comes to what others think, some say, don't believe them when they say you're great, and don't believe them when they say you stink. This protects you from being controlled by other people's opinions, which is completely subjective. The people who make the rudest and loudest comments are usually unqualified to make these judgments, for the qualified tend to have more compassion. They know how hard the work is and how tricky it can be to constantly deal with one's own ego. The rude ones almost never put themselves out there to do the very thing they're criticizing you for. So why should you care about what they think? And your mom, dad, best friend, partner, your partner's dog, they're not qualified to criticize unless, of course, they are, if you know what I mean. So be careful who you listen to. Keep a very small circle of qualified people whose opinions you trust, like your voice teacher or your accompanist. Sometimes even other musicians will make wacky, off-the-wall comments about the voice, but they don't know how the voice works, so they too are unqualified. Now I'm going to put myself out there once again for the sake of letting you know you are not alone. These things happen to all singers, no matter how long they've been singing or what level they're at. I'm sharing this because I think it's time for me to upgrade my fragile ego and stop missing out on all of the things life has to offer me once I dare to do this one thing. Mine is that I have an aversion to posting videos of myself singing. I know, it's hard to believe, and it might seem crazy, but there's a part of me that cringes when I do, or just thinking about it. And yet, I admire when other people do it. I know that I sing well, and I've posted before, but it is a rather rare occurrence for me if you follow me on IG. What am I going to do about it? Well, in 2024, I'm going to challenge myself to post more of myself singing. Let's say roughly once per month. That shouldn't be too hard. What do I stand to gain? Well, the truth is, those who know me personally know that I actually can sing. But the followers who have never met me probably think I'm just a motivational speaker on singing and that I don't actually know what I'm talking about. And this is a huge disservice to me and my brand. It's also a disservice to them because they don't know what I do. I feel my heartbeat race just thinking about it. But I do believe in practicing in what I preach, so here it goes. If I can do it, you can do it. Well, I know today I've said a mouthful, but I'd like to continue this discussion further. I want to know, what things are you procrastinating on, avoid, have an aversion to, or are fearful of doing? I've set up a very simple way for you to leave me your message, which might appear on my podcast. Simply tell me in a quick message which of these 4 things you're subject to when it comes to your own singing. Start with your name and where you're from. I'll choose some of your responses to help you find viable solutions in an upcoming podcast episode. Remember, sharing is caring. The more we hear about other singers' journeys, the less we'll feel alone. I'll put the link in the show notes. I really hope today has got you thinking about what barriers you're currently facing, but more than that, I want you to put together a plan on what you're actually going to do about it. Knowing is the first step, but actually doing something about it is where you'll actually get to your magic. Remember that special announcement I mentioned? Here it is. Starting today, I'm launching an exclusive new service designed to transform your singing quickly and effectively. If you've ever wanted a day entirely focused on elevating your vocal skills and accelerating your progress, my new VIP Day coaching sessions are exactly what you need. These aren't your typical coaching sessions. I've crafted each VIP day to cater to specific aspects of singing, whether that's mastering your genre, perfecting your technique, developing your unique style, or a comprehensive mix of all 3. It's a full day just for you, focused entirely on making significant strides in your singing. Each VIP day includes a focused 6-hour session with one-on-one coaching, customized exercises, and actionable feedback that'll get you ready for the stage or studio. We'll start with a 30-minute prep call to clarify your goals, and after your session, you'll receive a 30-minute follow-up call to ensure continued progress. You'll also get a clear action plan and custom resources like playlists and other exercises to continue your development. Whether online or in person, I ensure a seamless and impactful experience. Now, spaces for each VIP day are limited because they're exclusive and in high demand. So, if you're ready to truly transform your singing, check out the link in the show notes to book your spot. Make sure you act within 48 hours after the show airs to claim your special bonus, a 25% reduction on a 3-hour follow-up package. This will enhance your learning and your progress. Don't miss this opportunity to invest in your voice and your future in music. Thank you for tuning in today. I can't wait to see how many of you will join me on these incredible transformational VIP days. Musically, Monique.